So I'm recording this then. So I would like to introduce you to Prof Falk. Prof Falk is a professor in Winston School of Education and Social Policy at Merrimack College in the USA. She's also the director of the Master's Program in Community Engagement and chair of the Department of Applied Human Development and Community Studies, a department which includes a graduate degree program in community engagement, social work, and school counseling, and an undergrad degree in human development and human services. She's the founding director of the Community Engagement Program, as well as the founding chair of the department. And she's also a country director of the International Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association. So there's a long reference about her, and I can share it with you later on. But I think it will be great to introduce Prof Falk. So the only thing that I would like to ask you is that we stay mute during the session, and then we ask her questions at the end, if that's possible. And then I'm going to say over to you, Prof Falk. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jordan, and thank you to all of you who are here for this presentation. I'm delighted to be with you, and I look forward to sharing with you a little bit about my work and my experiences, and I hope that this presentation on building a meaningful and sustainable partnership is truly valuable for you, and that you're able to apply some of the principles and ideas that I put forth as part of this presentation. So I'm
Your sound, Audrey, your sound is gone. You switched it off. Or somebody.
so sorry about that.
Yeah,
sorry
okay.
about that.
You're back.
Okay. Great. Okay, my apologies. So this is our agenda, and so over the next hour, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself, the work that I do, my professional background. We'll talk about characteristics of partnerships, particularly meaningful and sustainable partnership strategies and approaches for doing this work, how we can prepare and support both students as well as sites that we're working with, and we'll sum up with some takeaways and discussion if you would like. I would love to take your questions and talk about any ideas or challenges that you're facing in regard to your work with partners. Okay. So this is our plan for our time together. So I'd like to start by just sharing a little more background. Dr. Jordan gave you a little bit of my bio, which is wonderful. Just to share a little bit further, the college that I am with is called Merrimack College, and it is located in North Andover, Massachusetts in the United States. And I am just about to begin my 12th year at Merrimack College doing this community engagement work. I am originally from New York City, and I lived in New York until I came actually to Boston, Massachusetts to pursue my undergraduate degree. And there I studied English education and art history, and also began really exploring a lot of my interests related to service and community engagement during that time, and was really so excited and passionate about community engagement work that I went straight from my undergraduate degree to Romania for 2 years, where I was a Peace Corps volunteer and had the opportunity to teach English there, and also to work with orphans and children who were in the institutions in Romania. And so really from that time on, my work has been completely focused on various aspects of community partnership and community engagement. and with a very strong focus and commitment to youth and to families and to diversity and community inclusion. So those are some of the things that I'm really passionate and excited about. I bring a lot of experience in schools and in colleges and nonprofit settings to my perspective on community partnerships. In particular, um, right as I was pursuing my doctoral studies, I was working as an executive director of a small nonprofit organization that was a partnership between the University of Massachusetts Boston, UMass Boston, and its local community. And so that was really serving on the nonprofit side of a university community partnership, and was a really an important lens for me. And of course, now, since then, I've been at Towson University for 4 years as a tenure track faculty member, and now at Merrimack, going into my 12th year. So all these years, I've been focused on service learning and community partnership and community engagement from the faculty lens. But I like to think about kind of all of the partners and how we all work together to address community needs and to pursue shared goals. On this background slide, I put two recent publications that I have been a part of um, that are informing this presentation. This is not a presentation specifically on these two works, but they're examples of the kind of partnership work that I'm involved in right now and that's important to me. So the first one is focused on an early college, well, an initiative called Lawrence to College. Lawrence, Massachusetts is the local city adjacent to North Andover, Massachusetts, where the college is located. It is a city of immigrants. It is a city that struggles with a lot of diverse challenges, including low income, and language barriers and the various challenges that often come with being an immigrant city, but also has many cultural resources, as well as people who are eager to move forward in their lives. And so we've had a partnership with a nonprofit organization located in Lawrence called Squash Busters for many years. I don't know if you're familiar with the sport of squash, but Squash Busters is an organization that gets kids playing the sport of squash, but at the same time really focuses on these young people's education and academic support and helping students stay in school, be successful in school, and move toward college. So our partnership with these students has really focused on having our students serve as mentors and supports and guides to these students when they are in their high school senior year, to help them think through the college application process and to help them kind of move into colleges of their choice. I slipped and said early college when I was first mentioning our partnership, Lawrence to College. We do have an early college program here at Merrimack College, and in many respects, Lawrence to College helped to stimulate the interest of the college in doing deeper kinds of partnerships, such as the early college program. And the second publication that is listed on this slide is one that's about our fellowship program. And the fellowship program is kind of a signature program of the master's program in community engagement, which I oversee. And it places our graduate fellows in schools, in colleges, and in nonprofit organizations, and even in some government organizations, government agencies in the area, where they do extensive service experiences. And in exchange for that service, these students receive full tuition scholarships while they're pursuing our master's degree. And the fellowship program, as you can imagine, requires me to do extensive amounts of partnership work, recruiting sites, recruiting fellows, making those matches, appropriate matches, and also supporting the students as well as the sites all through those fellowship experiences. So a lot of my interest in community partnerships also is directly related to my work over these many years overseeing this wonderful fellowship program. So that's just a little bit about me and my background and how I'm coming into this presentation. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit about partnerships and what we mean by partnerships and what we value about partnerships. So when I'm talking about partnerships for the purposes of this presentation, I'm referring to how community organizations and higher education institutions collaborate with one another to address identified needs, and also leveraging the various resources available, including community resources as well as resources through the colleges and universities. Um, and it's very important that partnerships involve shared or complementary mission, values, and goals. So in other words, all the organizations should be on the same page in terms of kind of where they're headed, why they're partnering, how they're working together. I want to talk a little bit about both what is in it, why should sites be interested in a partnership, and also why higher ed institutions might be interested in partnering together. So when we think about sites or organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, and why they might be interested in partnering with higher education, I think there are many reasons for that, right? So, of course, they are working to pursue their own mission and their goals, and they see colleges and universities as uh, sources of resources. And that can be the very resource of the college and its space and its equipment and its faculty and their expertise, and the students and their energy and passion. Um, there's opportunities, of course, for grants and joint fundraising and grants writing. Sites, nonprofits, community organizations see students as future employees potentially. And it can be wonderful to have a partnership that is really helping students to develop their professional skills so that they can transition easily into jobs and into the workforce, and potentially even be hired by organizations that they began serving with while they were students. So that's a really great opportunity for NGOs and community organizations. And generally, sites do see themselves as partners with higher education in developing the skill sets and experience of students. So this is something that NGOs generally value very highly, because they are not only committed to doing the work that they do, but they're also committed to building their sector and building the future workforce and leaders in the human services, social services, community sector. So all of those are reasons sites may be interested in connecting and working with higher education institutions. Certainly, I would also say that these kinds of partnerships can build the reputation of NGOs. They can help build the brand of NGOs. They can help elevate the work that NGOs are doing in the community. Um, they help to offer opportunities for the partners, community partners, to know cutting edge information, scholarship, to have that access they might not otherwise have access to, and then to also do evidence-based practice so they can use what they learn to apply to their organizations and utilize best practices, known and researched best practices in the field. On the higher education side, there's just as many reasons for partnership, and lots of advantages for faculty and for students and for institutions as a whole. Um, Oftentimes today, we see that colleges and universities have mission statements or strategic plans that very specifically identify civic engagement goals. And that's because higher education is interested in developing students as civic leaders. And it's also because higher education institutions see that they are a part of developing society and building communities, and that is an important role that higher education plays in our society. Uh, Promotion and tenure processes may be helpful, may be a part of community partnership work, which is to say that um, colleges and universities may value the work that faculty are doing in their communities, and that might support the promotion and tenure processes of faculty. And students, of course, as we said before, are gaining skills and experience, job preparation, things that they can put on their resume, that they can say that they've been a part of, and not just putting it on the resume, but also deeper than that, really learning about their interests, learning about their skills, developing their confidence, and feeling prepared as they graduate and move on into their future careers. Here I've also listed Boyer's Scholarship of Engagement. You may be familiar with Ernest Boyer, who kind of coined this idea of the scholarship of engagement, the idea that colleges and universities need to be in communities and need to be building communities, and that staying in our ivory towers is insufficient in terms of the roles and goals and responsibilities of higher education. So that is a hyperlink, and I can share this PowerPoint with Dr. Jordan so that you have direct access to that document. But I think it is important for higher education to recognize and realize its responsibilities in regard to building and developing communities and community partnership. Building meaningful and sustainable community partnerships is a critical piece of that work. So when we say meaningful partnerships, the idea is that we're trying to get beyond just the check the box, we've done that, but also think deeper about how this work can really be meaningful for everyone who's involved, and especially that it can have a deep impact, a transformative impact on our students and also on our communities. So we think about things like reciprocity, meaning that the partners all matter, and it's not meant to be a partnership that only addresses the needs on one side of the equation, but how is everyone mutually benefiting from the partnership work. And when we talk about meaningful partnerships, we also are focusing on diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging and access and opportunity. So all concepts that relate to how we can make sure that everybody is welcome, that everybody is involved, and that everybody has a real, genuine, authentic role in the partnership work that we do. So respect is critical, and being goal oriented is critical, right? So having goals for the partnership that we're working on collectively. So meaning making is part of what I wanted to get at in the title of this presentation, Meaningful Partnerships. How do we make meaning of community partnership work? How do we find the meaning in this work? And there's lots of ways we can consider that. Um, as I've been sharing by talking about meaningful partnerships as something that's goal oriented and outcome oriented, it can be helpful to utilize a logic model approach to thinking about our community engagement work. So logic models you may be familiar with, but these are visual depictions that map out everything that we're putting into this partnership work and then everything we're expecting to see come out of this work. So it's a nice way to do planning. It's a nice way to think about the evaluative components of our collaborations and our partnership. Um, and it really helps us to focus on what it is that we are attempting to do and how we plan to do it. Um, in partnerships, it's extra important that we have really clear communication. And so logic models can be one way that we can be very clear and concrete and explicit about our goals and our joint work together. This is also hyperlinked to a University of Wisconsin extension programs web pages about logic models with a number of different templates for logic models, as well as other related resources that I think are very helpful, and I'd encourage you to look at if you're looking for ideas for preparing logic models. Uh, Theory of change is a related concept to logic models. It's also the idea of being able to articulate what I would call the secret sauce, like what it is about what you're doing that is making a difference. So how are you making a difference in communities? How are you making a difference with your students? What is it about your intervention that is so important and so critical that if you took out those pieces, it just wouldn't be the same? I think about um, my cooking. I love to improvise in the kitchen. And you know how there's certain levels of improv that you can do in the kitchen and you still come out with the product you wanted. And then if you improvise too far, you're not having the outcome that you hoped for, right? If you substitute too much, you're not going to make that cake you wanted to make or whatever it is. So theory of change is what are the necessary pieces? What is it that's most important and essential to your program? And so that can be helpful. Again, why is the logic model and theory of change important is because if we're trying to have meaningful partnerships, that means we are committed to real change. We are committed to real outcomes in our community. So we want to be precise and specific about what it is we're doing and how we are moving toward impact. The other piece of meaning making is that reflection component. And typically, when we think about reflection and meaning making in community engagement and service learning kind of work, we're thinking about our students learning and we're thinking about the ways that we can help students reflect on their practice, their praxis in communities and in community partnerships, and how they can use that reflection as an opportunity to grow, to transform perhaps some of their ideas, to critically reflect on perhaps some of their biases, for example, and how they can also connect the dots between courses that they're taking, content, conceptual frameworks that they're learning in the classroom, and how they can connect that with that real world experience that they're having through these community partnerships. And so I think it can be very important as we're thinking about building and sustaining community partnerships to be thinking about how we are supporting students to do that genuine and deep meaning making. And there are many authors who've written quite a bit related to reflection as it pertains to service learning and community engagement. A few scholars in this area include Dwight Giles and Janet Eiler and Barbara Jacoby. and I would encourage you to maybe take a look at some of their work. There's others as well. But the work in the area of reflection has encouraged practitioners to think about how we can support students to do reflection in advance of the service activities, of partnership activities, during the implementation of those activities, and also post after those partnership activities have ended. And scholars have also encouraged practitioners to build in reflection opportunities that are very diverse and helpful for different types of student learners, different types of learning styles. So reflection activities can be through writing, reflection activities can be through speaking, through acting, through dancing, through poetry, through video making, through various types of interactive exercises and activities. And so that's also an important piece of the meaning making process. Re- Along those lines, social constructivism is a really critical concept related to meaning making. And this concept is one that is connected with Lev Vygotsky, a Soviet psychologist who developed sociocultural theory in the early 1900s. And social constructivism is the whole idea that we make meaning through our words, through our experiences, and that the way we understand things is by connecting with others to talk about our experiences. And so having the lens of social constructivism as we think about meaning making in community partnership can be very, very helpful. Just thinking about how we understand our society, how we understand our experiences through the process of connecting with other people is really, really important. And I think it also connects with the idea of how we orient students, how we orient community partners to the work that we're doing together, how we stay connected and continue the communication all through our partnership experiences, and how even when we are assessing and evaluating our community partnership work, that we do it through the process of connection and relationship and community. So we've talked about the meaningful side of community partnerships a little bit, and I want to come to the concept of sustainability in community partnership work. I think that I know for myself personally, when I enter into a community partnership, I always think about it as a long-term partnership, right? It may or may not actually work out that way, but I think about it from a long-term perspective, because I think that the most meaningful and the most impactful community partnership work that we can do is work that is done over a long period of time. Even just the very work of developing relationships with humans and between organizations takes time. Building that trust takes time. Establishing ways of communication takes time. Um, and I think that it can be super helpful to kind of have a framework of starting small but thinking big, starting with the immediate but thinking long term. So when we think about sustainability in community partnerships, it's helpful to think about an organizational learning and development and change framework, right? So the idea that organizations and communities grow and change over time, the needs of communities are always changing, right? I mean, there are some needs that sort of stay the same, but life changes, society changes, resources available to us change, technology changes, right? So we want to stay current. We want our work to stay real and timely and authentic. And so there is an evolutionary process to our partnerships, right? They're going to ebb and flow and change over time. And the evaluation piece becomes really critical, again, because we want to make sure we're always doing useful and relevant work. Participatory action research, you may be familiar with. This is the idea of doing research that is in communities, with communities, and based on real live action and activities that we're doing. So the idea that it's not a formal laboratory kind of experiment, but rather living and learning in real time. Um, and so that's all part of the sustainability so that it becomes a cyclical process of trying out things, experimenting, working together, communicating, and then as we have successes together, building on those successes and trying something even greater and perhaps more impactful. Sustainability definitely requires commitment, and that can be financial, that can be human resources. That means just that we are here for the long term and that we're not going away, and that we're going to keep listening and working together. I wanted to include David Kolb's experiential learning theory in this presentation because while it is related often to learning styles and how students learn, um, it's also relevant to organizations and organizational learning. And I think it has relevance to community partnerships in both regards. So we can think about how students learn through a community partnership experience, having a concrete experience, reflecting on that experience, conceptualizing from that experience, and then trying things a little bit differently, perhaps the next go around. And similarly, we can think about participatory action research in that regard and organizational learning in that regard as well. So we're going to kind of move out of just thinking about what meaningful and sustainable partnerships are and kind of focus a little more on different strategies and approaches for building um, these kinds of community partnerships. And for that end, I share on this slide the service learning matrix, which is just one visual depiction that I think can be really helpful for thinking about um, the impact, the value of our community partnership work, and the ways that this matrix is constructed is thinking about the students and their learning as that goes from low to high, and then communities and the impact on communities also from low to high. And I think that this can be helpful in thinking about the different ways that we work with our community partners, the ways that students engage and interact with communities, and who's benefiting from this work. And it can be a helpful reminder, too, that we can do all that we can to try to deepen the impact again on both sides of the equation. How can we deepen impact for students who are involved in community partnerships in terms of their learning and professional development and growth? And how can we deepen the work that we do in communities to ensure that there is real, meaningful, and sustainable change in communities in the areas that we've identified that we're trying to address together. So when I think about strategies for community partnership, immediately the idea of community building comes to mind. And I know I've already talked about the idea of relationship building. When we're working with communities, we want to do so in ways that are welcoming and inclusive and supportive. And again, this work is largely around communication and how we can communicate with one another across our sectors and eh, do so in ways that are respectful and kind and appreciative. And doing so also requires building space for safe and courageous conversations. And, when we're working with community partners, hopefully lots of things are going to go exceptionally well, but likely we are going to confront challenges and we may have some conflicts along the way. And how we deal with those problems and conflicts that occur in community partnerships is very important. So we want to be thinking about these relationships as positively as we can, believing that everybody who is connected with our partnership is there for the right reasons, and that we all have good intentions. And if we remember that, then it's, when things go wrong or there's trouble or conflict, it can be an opportunity for a teachable moment. It can be a learning opportunity. It can be a growth opportunity if we approach it with an open mind and with an open heart, and with the idea that we all have the opportunity to grow through the community partnership that we do. Relatedly, in terms of our approach to community partnership work, I think it's very, very important that we take an assets-based approach always. And that means that we're approaching community partnerships with a lens of positivity, and looking for what's right and looking for what's present. So communities have tremendous amounts of resources. Some of those are human resources, the wonderful people in communities and the skills and passion and interest and enthusiasm that they have. And some of those are institutional resources, organizational resources, or cultural resources, or even just geographic resources, right? The beauty of places and spaces, parks, museums, um, libraries, right? There are many, many resources in communities that we can be looking for and that we can take advantage of in our community partnership work. And similarly, colleges and universities have tremendous resources. Again, some of those are human, our students, our faculty, our staff, our administration, and we also have lots of institutional resources that we can make available to communities, such as our classrooms and our teaching tools, equipment, computers, technology, and so on. So I don't know if you're all familiar with the concept of appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is a form of organizational development work. It's a practice that's used to identify all the things that are going well. We can use appreciative inquiry at different levels, but when we're thinking about an organization or a community, we're thinking about everything that's right and what's working and what's successful. And appreciative inquiry is a generative approach where we try to find all those successes, and the aspirations, the values of an organization or a community, and try to build from there any projects or partnerships that we have. So I really like the concept of appreciative inquiry as a way to approach community partnership work, because it is very asset and resource based and values based. Um, and it's a way to not simply focus on the problems, because we all know that there are problems, right? There are many problems in our society, but how can we flip the lens and look at what's going well and try to strategize for the utilization of those resources to build more of what we love about our communities, to build more of what we love about our partnerships and our community work together. Finding partners for community engagement work, for community partnerships, may be challenging, may be easy for you. I did want to spend a little time thinking about it with you. Um, so it's work that you might do through different types of community outreach and promotions, through networking, through attending conferences and trainings and workshops and events, and just speaking with people about what they're doing, and finding some common interests and common goals. Um, you can do so through your LinkedIn sites and through other kinds of social media, and just through professional networking. So I think one important piece for higher education folks regarding finding partners is really just promoting the fact that you're interested in partnership work, that you are eager to be engaged, that you want to be involved, putting it out there, and seeing what happens, can be very effective. Um, I think it can be valuable to think about um, identifying partners in terms of the focus that you have, your discipline, your field, the work you're doing, the research you're doing, the teaching that you're doing in the classes and the students that you work with. That can help you, perhaps thinking geographically can be helpful, right? So where are you located, and what are the communities near you, and what are their needs and their interests? What are the organizations you're familiar with? The people that you know, right? All of that can be helpful. um, and also thinking about whether it is a partnership that's very local that you're seeking, or perhaps not. So it may be that a partnership can does not have to be very specifically geographically based, and it could be something that's across distances, right? Dr. Jordan and I have been a part of a partnership work involving people in 5 different countries. So it doesn't necessarily have to be work with folks who are around the corner. Again, it depends what your goals are, your interests, and what it is you're trying to achieve. This map that I've included here just gives you kind of a little view of Massachusetts, and the red area that's highlighted is Lawrence, which is, like I said, the city nearest to North Andover, which is um, right beside Lawrence. And so Lawrence is a city that Merrimack College and my program have connected with quite a bit, because it is so close to the college, and because it does have a number of um, opportunities for engagement, lots of areas where we feel we can support um, our local city of Lawrence. But there's many other areas that we also work closely with as a college as well. So as we're thinking about the characteristics we love to have in our partners, here are some thoughts. We are trying to build toward trust and rapport, that we just have a good relationship. We're thinking about resources and capacity. What is our capacity and resources? What are the resources and capacity of the NGOs or community organizations we're seeking to work with? We're thinking about things like interest and commitment. Is the interest really there? Is the commitment really there? Is the availability really there? Sometimes there may be interest, but there's just not time or other types of resources, and making sure that there's a relevant mission and expertise. So these are all kind of the things you would want to be thinking about as you are connecting with potential partners, and really checking in to see if these elements are there. As you're developing projects, if it is a partnership that's focused on a course, you really want to think closely about the goals and outcomes from an academic perspective, and that there's alignment with the discipline. You want to think about what skills that you're helping students develop. You want to think about what social needs the partnership will develop. And being realistic with any goals that you have for partnership, and especially thinking about timeframes and schedules. We in academia live by the semester, right, or the trimester, or whatever the schedule is at our various institutions. And when classes end, lots of things stop for a period of time until that next semester, right? Whereas NGOs typically do their work all throughout the calendar year. And so we have to be really mindful about schedules and what we can commit to as higher ed partners and what we can't commit to. And it takes creativity and it takes flexibility to figure out ways to get beyond our rigid academic schedules. Other considerations in community partnership work are equipment and resources, alignment of values, and structures for ongoing communication and partnership. So depending upon what the project is, there's different types of resources that may be needed, right? It could be anything from art supplies to vans to drive students into the community. Um, and so just thinking about what is needed and who has these resources and how can we access these resources. So a lot of planning is needed. And I feel like the other pieces we've already talked a bit about. I'm noticing the time, so I'm going to take us forward a little bit. But I think that slide does lead nicely into this whole idea of institutional infrastructure and what is it our colleges and universities are providing to help us do the community partnership work that we want to do. So how are they helping from a technological perspective? Course design, is there financial support available? For example, if you do need to purchase supplies, get vans, how can you do those things? Are there things like teaching assistants or research assistants who can be used for this community partnership work? Are there professional development opportunities provided by the college or university to help you as you do this work? Because it's difficult and it's challenging, especially when it's something new to you. And especially even for new faculty coming in, how are we helping them to learn how to do this work and to do it well? When we're starting a partnership, as I've shared, I think starting small is the way to go, having just a simple pilot and designing it for success. You know, something that's really simple and straightforward and concrete, and you can see that it's going to work. You have everything you need for it to work. Then you celebrate it and you get feedback and you think, what's next and how can we grow from here? So along these lines, to sustain a partnership, you're assessing, you're communicating, you're identifying what went well, where are the opportunities for growth, and where do we go from here? And over time, really formalizing the structures and the partnership so that you have something that is, again, sustainable. Sustainable but not rigid, because we're always staying flexible and adapting to changing times. I'm going to just briefly breeze through these in the interest of time. You're thinking about student preparation as well as support for our sites. You want to be thinking about student learning and the different types of student learning, thinking about how their community partnership work, how their work in communities can help them develop a whole range of skills, including higher order skills. You want to be using community partnership work as a way to help students um, examine their own social identities, their privileges, and to really think about the biases they may have, prejudices, and to really use it as an opportunity for personal growth. Uh, Students need to understand the expectations, their roles and responsibilities, and also specific goals and deliverables of the project. Students ought to be fully invested in this community partnership work, that they feel they own it and they want to be successful. They want the work to be successful. The more that they understand the context for the work, the history of the community, the politics, the economic context, the more that they understand kind of the big picture, the more that they can understand why this work is so important and what their role is and how they are making a difference. It can be helpful to help students identify and address any fears they have, encourage them to take risks, and it's an opportunity for them to build confidence and self-efficacy, the sense that they can do good work, that they can make a difference, that they have skills that communities need and value. It is important that we center students as much as we are also centering communities in the community partnership work that we do. So really understanding students' interests and goals, how the partnership work is relevant to them and to their lives and their futures, helping them make those connections with their courses they're taking, offering students choices so that there's different ways they can contribute to a community partnership, or they can choose to contribute or not, can be important as well. And certainly offering students the opportunity to give lots and lots of feedback. We want to hear their voice and we want to use their ideas and suggestions to think about how to improve our partnership work in the future. When we're thinking about supporting sites, we have to consider what it is sites need to be effective partners. And as we grow our partnerships and build our partnerships, we may be able to formalize structures more and more with different types of orientation, with handbooks that explain our program, our policies, how we partner. We may have memoranda of understanding, so agreements with our partners. And of course, always we'll want to be having various types of communication. And we want to be helping our partners connect with our other partners, right? So building a network among our partners can be one of the most valuable things that we do. So in sum, just a few takeaway thoughts. We want to be listening to our communities, leaning into the strengths and resources and assets and opportunities that we find in our communities, identifying synergies. So where's that place where our goals and aspirations and resources connect best with the interests and needs of our communities? We want to deliver. If we say we're going to do what we need to do, and we need to do well, we want to build those systems and within our own institutions, as well as within NGOs and community institutions, to continue the work and to make real change in our communities. And we want to disseminate our practices. So this work is important, it's relevant, it is important locally, and it's important globally. So disseminating the good work that we do and sharing it so that others can try to do similar kinds of work is very, very important. And I know we are very close on time. We have just a few minutes left, but I would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Prof. Audrey. Appreciate it. It was really an interesting talk, and I think you catched everything and you addressed everything that is really important for any person involved in community engagement. I want to ask, is there anybody that do have a question for Prof? I want to ask, what was the biggest challenge that you experienced in your just an example, if you could give us an example that you experience in any of your partnerships, that will be interesting.
Sure, sure. So I will talk briefly about our early college. I keep calling it early college, Lawrence to College. Forgive me, I'm not sure why I keep doing that. Lawrence to College program. So I will share with you that I told you a little bit about Squash Busters and the partnership we have with Squash Busters in regard to the college access and the application process, that whole experience. So our work with Squash Busters has been wonderful. It's not been without its challenges, but I want to share that historically, in fact, the partnership did not start with Squash Busters at all. It actually started with the Lawrence Public Schools. So we were first working directly with Lawrence High School to collaborate with and to develop this program. In fact, it was Lawrence High School that initially reached out to us with the idea of some sort of tutoring and mentoring initiative. And we worked with them for a few years. And that was wonderful work. But it was really hard, we found, to partner with the public schools for a school day partnership. And those issues were largely around scheduling, that the school day was just so rigid. The structure of the public school day had so little opportunity for any sort of, times that our students could come in. And because those times were so rigid, it just was very hard for us to enter into those times. And so even while we had begun that partnership with the public schools, ultimately we found that we were able to kind of achieve our goals more readily working with a nonprofit organization that was focused on after school and had more flexibility in the days and the times that we could work with their students. So as I said before, the college itself, Merrimack College, has continued to do early college with Lawrence High School, and that has been an exceptionally fruitful partnership. But in terms of our college access and opportunity work, we've found that it's been more effective to work with the nonprofit that has a little more flexibility in their hours. So there's an example.
Thank you for that. And I must say we had a really great partnership that she addressed the international partnership, and we are moving to e-community work that is making it really interesting for us to work on. So I think it is we are looking forward to other interesting projects in e-community work. I want to, anybody questions at this stage? And I see we're running out of time. So I would like to thank Prof Audrey for your time and your a lot of effort to create such a presentation. I will share it then on the YouTube with the other colleagues. And I want
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording then.